Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. Here we are in mid-November now. I think it's Monday that we're broadcasting this one. We're talking about prayer and heading toward Thanksgiving. So
yes, I love it.
It's going to be fun.
Looking forward to it.
You and I and Dan, if we can, and Linda are going to have a little time about Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up. Just some insight about all that and how to truly be thankful and enjoy it and celebrate the privilege we have of celebrating that with God, and that'll be fun. But we've been talking about prayer, and last week we talked about Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done, seek His will, and then he gave that story about suppose you have a friend that comes to you, he's not going to get up because you're his friend or child or relative. It's because of persistence. And persistence, as we've described it, is seek God, seek God, seek God, stay with it until you get His will. And be careful not to think of, I got an answer and that's the end of it. Now I can go do what I need to do. Rather, it's that's just now the next milestone along the path.
Right. It's continuing to check in and getting the next step and the next piece of information He wants to give you as you walk along this path, right?
Right. So His will is to keep asking, seeking, and persistently stay with it. In other words, don't get lazy about it. And say, well, I think I know enough and I'll go take care of it. He says, well, if you go take care of it, you're walking away from my will. So stay with me. So He tells us, okay, now here is how I want you to be persistent. And go ahead and read, now this is in Luke, we just read 5 to 8. So now read 9 and 10. And we're going to look at, he's going to give us a description of this is what it looks like to be persistent.
Sure. So I say to you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks it will be opened.
Yeah. So in Scripture, by the way, if the same thing is repeated twice, it basically means really pay attention to this. I want to highlight it so that it stands out for you. And that this is something that, and Jesus repeated it twice. He says, so I say to you, ask, seek, and knock. If you ask, you'll receive. If you seek, you'll find. If you knock, it will be given to you. And he goes through this process. And this is where, in the English, the words are, they're pretty good, but they aren't completely descriptive of everything that it means. And this is where we have to go into the Greek and Hebrew and try to understand it. First of all, he just gave us that, in essence, there's 3 steps to this.
Right.
What are the 3 steps?
And they're actually distinct steps.
Yes.
Ask, seek, and knock.
Okay, ask, seek, and knock. Ask, seek, and knock. And we've already learned the ask, interesting enough, is the same all the time. What is it?
What do you have to say about this?
What do you have to say about this? What's your will? So that's why he keeps asking us to back up a step. And don't say, God, would you?
Right.
Because an ask would be, God, I need you to. Or I could, Dan could say to you, hey, Kathy, would you go get these things for me at the store? Would you take care of, Anna today? Would you drive her? I've got a plan, and I want you to execute my plan.
Right.
Now, he's asking you, So you could, he kind of implies you could say no, but basically he's saying, and by the way, don't say no to me.
This is my desire. Do this.
Yeah, this is it. That's not the ask. It's not asking God, would you? It's always the first ask is literally ask me for my will in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
And receive my will in every situation so that I can break in and say, hey, by the way, what you're thinking here, or the direction you're going, I want to check you, and I want you to do something different, And
Right.
you went through. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's important to, we've talked about this in Discerning God's Will in particular, but in other podcasts, but just from the practical standpoint, what that looks like. One of the things that you and Linda have taught us all is the idea of that keeping that running list going of things that you are asking him.
Right.
And, and those things that you need his wisdom on, and that you're asking him what he has to say, and you keep that, and you don't neglect that. You come back to that and you process together, and you share what God is telling you, and you continue processing through all of that.
Right. So, and think about what you just said there, is that it's not a generic ask.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't say, God, what's your will? And they just, whatever, just what's your will? What's your will?
I have this specific question right now I'm facing in my life, and I really need to know your will on this, God. How do I step into your will here?
Yeah, and this is why we start the prayer with our Father who art in heaven, is that it's personal, and my life is personal.
Right.
So that you're going to talk to God about, here's what's going, and you talk about this in what you use the word authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God, here's the things that are in my life that I really need to understand your will about this particular thing, and what Linda and I call our clutter list, or unresolved issues list. And we've got a whole list of them, and they're getting resolved, and there's new ones coming on. Why? Because life moves on. I'll just give you a simple one that we've experienced just because of what happened with Michelle, is that after Michelle passed, she has all of her stuff in her house.
Right.
And she has a lot of stuff, and as you know, because you were there with the filming, it's a big house with a lot of stuff.
Right.
And so it was overwhelming, really, to Linda particularly. So the night of the funeral,
especially in the middle of the grief,
the night of the funeral, we had gone to sleep, and then I woke up about 2, went out in the family room, was in the Word. Then Linda comes out about 30 minutes later, and she says, I'm feeling heavy-hearted, obviously because of what happened with Michelle, but she says particularly the thought, and by the way, we had put her house up on the market on 2 days before the funeral, and it sold in 2 hours.
That's amazing.
Cash and a 20-day close, no appraisal. Just we're gonna.
Just amazing.
It's like, man, look at this. And the good news is cash in 20 days. The bad news is 20 days.
Right. And that's a lot of stuff in 20 days.
Oh my gosh, And so Linda says, I'm overwhelmed by this. I can't fathom going through her house, trying to pack up, get all that stuff ready. What do we want? What are we going to do with it? Where's it going to go? I can't imagine that. It's overwhelming to me. I said, okay. I said, I can appreciate that. I said, let's talk to God about that. I believe he doesn't want you to be burdened, for sure. So we'll just focus on maybe some things that you want to take out, and then we're going to ask him, God, what do you have to say about how to do this, knowing that Linda can't handle the burden of that, and it's going to be hard for me to do it. So what do you have to say about that? And we seek your will. We know you have a will about this.
Right.
You have an answer. And so we added that, in a sense, to our unresolved issues list.
Right. I'm just going to point out what you said right there before you go on for that listener who's listening at this. You started with, he has an answer.
Right.
And coming from that place, there's freedom to ask the question, what do you have to say about it?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And think about it and go ahead and state, why is that so important?
That's so important because you're acting on faith, actually, that you're coming from, his relationship with us is one of covenant, and that he wants to deliver best, none better, and that he wants to walk with us every step into his will. That's part of his relationship with us. And when we know we can trust that, no matter how big our giant feels or how overwhelming or how grievous or whatever, when we can come from a place of, we trust you for best, none better, and we trust what your resolution is, and we just want to go there, then that gives us the freedom to ask the real question. What do you have to say? How do I answer this? This is what I'm feeling.
Right.
But I know you not only, I could sit here and put a pretty smile on and make it look and sound much better than it does, but you don't need me to do that. You already know how I feel. So I'm coming to you with that and asking what you want to say in this space.
Right. Right.
And I trust you with that answer.
Yeah. And see the difference. You can see the difference of most people look at, okay, I got a problem. It's burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
God, the question really tends to go this way. God, would you please make it so that it's easy for us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's our request. And then people have been taught God's answer is going to be yes, no, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's no. And by the way, I'll find out when it's not easy.
Right.
I guess the answer was no. It's going to
So
be
if it
hard.
wasn't, if it's not easy, it's a no.
It's a no.
Yeah.
And so God, would you? And he says, well, why don't you go the opposite direction and just say, I got a problem, and here's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about that? I know you're going to answer me, and I know something about that. And this is what's really what we got to try to communicate to everybody. His answer is going to be best and none better.
Right.
It's absolutely going to be best and none better. And it's covenant. It's going to be a blessing. Now, at the moment, I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know even when. I just know I will get this answer. And my persistence is, I am seeking what you have to say. I do know something about it. You are going to answer me. And it's going to be best and none better. Because you already know.
Right. And so you and Linda then were coming with this real authentic question, and then go ahead and share. I've heard the story, but I want everyone to hear how he answers this and in a miraculous way, then following through.
Yeah. So all I said is that, Linda, I know whatever he's going to say, it's going to be so you are not burdened by this, because there are answers to this, and he will discover what he has to say, and let's just find out. And I said, and I even said this to her, I said, don't even think about what I call crossing the bridge yet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wait until we see the next step.
Yes, good.
Okay, so, and she said, okay. So the next morning, this is the morning after the funeral, I get a phone call from the buyer. And he says, hey, I know that we've talked about you'd like to sell some of your stuff in your house. And we were talking about me going to choose some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you know what? Why don't we do it the opposite? What? He says, why don't you and your wife and your family go take what you want out of the house, and I'll buy everything else, and you don't have to move anything.
What an amazing blessing, right?
And it was like, hallelujah, yes. Absolutely, let's go do that. So there were some people, leaders, Christina and Joel Gunn from San Antonio. There was Shara, our daughter-in-law, and some friends of hers, Aiden, our handyman. And I call them all up and say, we have to go over and find stuff, go through the house, pick stuff that we're going to take out, pack it up, box it, and take it over to our house. Can you help us today? Yeah, sure. So and they all have SUVs, and they all come and with trucks. And Linda goes through the house, identifies, we found her china, by the way. Michelle, Um, she loved decorating.
Yes, she did.
She
For
had
all seasons, right?
she had a room that was only boxes of candles
Mm,
that she used for all of her holidays. It's
mm-hmm.
like Linda said, well, I'd like those, and there were some dishes, and there's just a variety of things. So she goes through the house and just points it out to people. And then everybody took a room, and we boxed that stuff up in a tote.
Mm-hmm.
I bought totes, take it out to the garage, and then we all loaded it up in the trucks and the SUVs and drove it over to our house. And literally by the next morning, Linda had already put it away, or we put it into storage. So by Saturday night, we were pretty much out of there.
That's amazing.
And
That's amazing.
it was, as far as Linda and I were involved, we were pretty well done. And we had already moved everything out, and everything was identified, and we'd already done it, and there was much more to do. Well, the big issue behind that were Michelle's clothes. And she had Michelle's what would be considered a clothes horse, which meant she had clothes everywhere.
Right, and shoes. I remember she loved shoes.
Shoes and boots, and so Shara says, "I'll take care of this." So she got her friends to come over, organize it, and then she found, and this is really cool, and remember, she's praying, what do I do with this clothes?
Right.
And God led her through 2 connections to a women's shelter in Castle Rock that was begging for clothes.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so, okay, if we organize them, could you come get them? Yes. And they did. And so over the next several days, they emptied her house of all those clothes.
Wow.
And they were donated to something that's really going to be beneficial.
Right.
And we didn't even have to worry about it at all. But Shara was praying, where do you want the stuff to go?
Right.
And
right.
God said, well, specifically, how about
I've
this?
got a plan. Let's do this.
I'm going to show you that. So that really all the burden was released. The answers were given. Yes, you have to go do this thing, including, and we're going to talk here about seeking, is we're asking for his will, his answer, what do you have to say? Then the next word in the Greek there is seek. Okay, now that is our action, and it's look for it as if it's lost treasure.
Right.
It's there. I want you to discover it, and I want you to pursue truth and truth and truth until you know that you know that you know there's my answer, and I'll let you know that. And I need you to seek it, of things you're going to learn and not learn, things that are good and not good. And don't just say to me, like what Shara saying, where do I put these clothes?
Right.
He didn't say the woman's shelter.
Right.
He said, why are you looking for it? Yes. Okay. What's important to you? Well, we want it to go to a place that's going to be beneficial. We don't want those clothes to be just sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
Okay. And then what Shara is, okay, let me go seek. So she gets online and she's starting to look at alternatives. She tells her friends. Her friends say, well, here's an opportunity, and gave him a certain person to talk about. They talked about that. And this woman, now she's seeking. This woman, 2 or 3 connections later, says, hey, have you thought about the woman's shelter in Castle Rock? No, I don't even know it exists. Yeah, it does, and and they have women. It's for women specifically, particularly that are abused, and they need new clothes because they've left their homes without anything.
Right.
Okay, well, let me call them. So she's calling them, and how do you operate? How does it work? What are you about? And she's looking.
And that's all part of the seeking process, is gathering the information and seeing what God stirs in her spirit as she gathers this as well, right?
Yeah. So you're seeking truth, and is this a good place? Is this your place? And either God confirms it with yes, I'm reinforcing that this is my answer, or partly
Right.
my
Or he
answer.
narrows it out and
Or he
says
says
no.
no. But it was like, keep going. So then it's, yes, this is a good thing to seek. You've found something good. Then she goes to this last step, knock. Knock is this it? Is this the one do you want me to do? Is this the door you want me to go? Now, by the way, I need to add this as a caveat. Sometimes the door is just a hallway. It just opens up a hallway and there's other things to go do. So it's not necessarily it. It's just, yes, you're on the right corridor now. And what's going to happen along this corridor is going to be it, but you haven't quite got there yet. So
Right.
an open door doesn't mean it's ultimately it. It could be another, hallway. But in this case, it was, here's where we are. Here's how much we got. And of course, we've got only a week to get this done. So her question is really pretty simple. After she's getting some confirmation, can you come and get this week?
Within this week, yes. That's some narrowing information right there.
There's a knocking. Looks like this is it. I don't yet know because there's one more answer yet that has to be known. Can you do it? Because they could have said, man, we would love this stuff, but we can't come to get it for 3 weeks. The answer automatically is no, we don't have that time.
Right.
We have to be out of the house. So can you come and get it this week? Yes. Yes. What day? Wednesday. We'll be there. And they went and did it. So it was ask, seek, and knock.
It's a great illustration.
Yeah.
Very clear one. Yeah.
And Shira, if she would have gotten a no, we can't do it this week, she would have said, I love what you're doing, but we can't give these to you because the knocking turned into a closed door. And what I keep telling people about that is don't knock the door down. If it's literally a no, then accept it as a no. And that means there's something else. You're on the right path and you've gotten things going.
Right.
And you may have to backtrack a little bit and say, I thought this was it. But it turned out not to be. Okay, I'm going to go back and seek some more. That's okay. And God says it's a discovery process. Now, here's something really cool, and then we'll finish with this. What he enjoys is you being with him in the process.
Right. Right.
That's why it's not, I'll just give you the answer. It's, I want to show you things. I want to have you discover things. I want to ask you questions. I want you to be with me. I don't want you to leave me.
Right. I actually delight being with you.
I delight in the process. So if I just gave you the answer, you'd say, oh, thanks, I'll see you later. And you're not going to be around me. I love being with you.
Right.
I think it's purposely built in as ask, seek, and knock. Ask, seek, and knock. So the persistence is don't get lazy by saying, I guess I have to wait and see what happens. No. Are you diligently seeking as if it's lost treasure, knowing that it's there, you just haven't found it yet? And then when you get to something specific, is this it? I'll guide the whole thing, God says. I'll confirm it's it, and you'll know that you know that you know that, yes, you got there. And then, of course, after you get there, the next question is, okay, now what? And so persistence is using this beautiful aspect of prayer of God, am I understanding this right? Is tell me the truth about where you want those clothes. And I'll talk to you about it. And he said to Cheryl, what's important to you?
Right.
Well, this is okay. Well, let me guide you into that. And it's a beautiful dialogue.
What a great example. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about this as he goes in tomorrow. We'll talk about the last piece of this discussion, which is I'm not going to bait and switch you. So
good.
We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for sharing and for sharing these just tangible examples of how that walks out, how we live it out.
Yeah,
So
it really
thank you
is
so
beautiful.
much. If you have questions, feel free to send them in, questions@afjministry.com. And a lot of what we're talking about, what we spoke about today, you can hear an entire in-depth study on discerning God's will that goes really deep into these scriptures. And so that would be a great one if you've got questions as well.
Yep.
So thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.